Today we'll be going over this weekend's auctions ending anywhere between Friday the 13th and Sunday the 15th. Starting off with this Pinstripe Monsoon. We actually showed this off on our live stream. If you haven't checked those out, we do them, or try to do them every single Tuesday, anywhere between 7 to 8-ish. So come check it out. It's a lot of fun and I answer any questions people have. But let's get right into this one here. Pinstripe and Monsoon are both very visual animals, and sometimes things that you would think compete actually work together quite well, like the blackhead gene works very well with much brighter type morphs like Lavender, but sometimes they just compete, and that's very much the case here. Pinstripe and Monsoon are competing, and it's created this freckled bronzish type snake. But there's a lot of power to be had here. I actually really like Pinstripe. Often I hear people who love Monsoon say that they don't care for Pinstripe, and I always scratch my head at that. So it's kind of ironic to see the two of them mashed together here, because they're very similar in that they kind of do the same type of disruption, except Monsoon does it even crazier. So there is a reserve price on this, but there is a lot of interest, and I have seen Monsoons hit their reserve price lately. This boy here could be a good way to start in the Monsoon project, because you know, when you're spending so much money on a project like Monsoon, it's probably best to go with a boy, because if you think about it this way, you go with a girl, you're going to get her up to size much slower, usually 2 years at absolute best if you're very, very lucky, and more likely about the average of 3 years, and sometimes 4 or 5. I've heard of even more sometimes. The point is that a girl is going to take longer, and then when you get her to size, she's going to breed once for that year. Just one time. And while that's great, and having a girl, you know, eventually a visual girl in your collection is going to be beneficial, no doubt, to start off, makes a lot more sense to breed that male into it. Unless you're going to get a male and a female to start making visuals right off the bat, it makes more sense to start creating hets, because let's face it, if you get the girl all by herself, you're going to create hets anyways, and you're going to just create one pairing, and that's it. Whereas if you get the male, you can actually pair it a couple different times, and maybe put all those together to try to hit visuals, you know, adding extra genetics into there. And a good way to go with Monsoon is color. Color is the best way to go. I haven't seen much that can really disrupt the pattern, and quite frankly, I don't know why you'd want to. It's already really just perfection into what it's going to do. And that's just creating an absolutely insanely chaotic look. You can kind of see it right here too, you know, putting Pinstripe with it. They kind of just compete with each other, and they kind of really just do the same thing. So color is the way I would recommend it, although the Pinstripe definitely does help add that bronziness to it. I like that quite a bit, actually. But this would be a good one to go with. No doubt, I think that Monsoon is definitely still a big-time heavy hitter, and it deserves it, because it's probably the most visually dominant gene in terms of what it's doing to the pattern that's in ball pythons, and quite frankly, in many reptiles just in general. Moving right along to this chocolate Enchi clown, and chocolate is a gene that I really can't wait to eventually get into. It's a very potent and cool gene, and you can see what it does here, again, with what would normally be kind of more of a brightening type gene. Enchi brings in these oranges and reduces the pattern, but it pairs very well with the chocolate, because now you've got this almost like rusty type color that's very much more dark, kind of reins in what the Enchi normally does and creates this beautiful oranging to it that the Enchi normally would, but I think it reins it in a different direction, kind of keeping it a little more dark. I really like everything about this. The head stamp, the melting chocolate going down its back, all on this almost graham cracker type look. Just very, very cool, beautiful animal here. I can see this staying in the range that it's put at, possibly. You know, usually when people start them at these higher amounts, it's their way of putting a reserve without putting the reserve. So I think that it's definitely a good price. I mean, I see these types go for quite a bit more normally. So a really powerful girl, and a good one at that, if you want to start working the chocolate gene. Here's another one we talked about on our live, would be this Yellowbelly puzzle. Puzzle's so awesome. I remember commenting on the near symmetrical egg-like pose that it's creating right here. I really like the pattern down here, this almost fire that it's jumping up from something underneath. Very, very, very cool. Puzzle just it is so cool and unique with what it does to the pattern, like a bunch of little islands, or what it's really named for is like the little puzzle pieces that it's doing. So really cool. A lot of people don't know this, but it actually brings in a little bit of a lighter type tinge to the animal too. It kind of brightens the animal up, which is why you're seeing such a beautiful reaction to it with Yellowbelly. Yellowbelly is normally a very subtle type gene, and here it is not. It stands apart from just a normal puzzle, no doubt, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I really like the coloring here, and like I said, I love the patterns just jumping up like flames, you know, from like a fire that are crackling down below. It's very cool and very unique. Again, puzzles are a really nice one. This one does have a bid on it. I believe it was at 400, which is another one that probably started at the reserve, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this go for more. If you're interested in getting into the puzzle and you need a girl, this would be a really nice one to do. Yellowbelly is not a gene to be sneezed at to go along with that. You can see its influence here in just the standard combo of the puzzle and the Yellowbelly. So imagine it being layered with even more awesomeness like BlkPastel or Spotnose. They work so well with everything else, and puzzle does as well. From Chimera would be this Disco or Fire Lace Clown. The reason it says Disco or Fire was, well, I mean, I think you can see the description down here was a pastel fire lace clown to a disco 100% clown. So it could be fire or disco, and they do very similar things. But what I'm most interested in is the lace. Getting a lace clown is very advantageous. I do not sleep on lace. That's another one that's even more subtle than Yellowbelly, but holy cow, lace is maybe the new Yellowbelly. It is incredible, and it has a very cool, very beautiful super form that brightens the animal up and cleans it up quite a bit in a different kind of way than what Desert Ghost would. It complements it very well, and right now is just kind of all the rage. Lace, redhead, these types of genes right now, they're very subtle. These subtle little genes make big, not so subtle improvements in combos. In fact, I would say take a look at some of these combos with and without lace, with and without Yellowbelly. That's a big difference. And if you want to get a male from a good breeder that you can start breeding that lace into many different females, this would be a good pick. You know, right now the price is very advantageous. I think I see these normally going for a lot. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint here. A lot of times around this time of year, people are spending money on gifts and other such things. There's not so much to throw around anymore. You start to see a lot of these start to go for a little bit cheaper in some cases. People maybe not spending quite as much. Take advantage of it. It is a incredible deal right now. This will definitely go up, but a lace clown normally would go up a lot more. This male, again, like I said, you could breed it into so many different females, and the sky's the limit. You could start breeding lace into a large portion of your collection, and you will never go wrong with that. Eventually you get a lace, since it is a incomplete dominant, you could breed it into, say, another clown of some sort of combo and hit a visual clown with lace, and then you grow that girl up, and then you breed the male back to it, and you could start looking at the white lace clowns. Just absolutely incredible, and they're just absolutely incredible. Very bright, very pronounced animals, almost like they've got Desert Ghost in them, but a different flavor of it. Even some of these combos with just lace by itself, Russo being in this one as well, being also a very subtle type gene, one that I work here, it's absolutely crazy. When I saw this snake, I was so happy that I have Russo deeply embedded into quite a bit of my collection. You know, by itself, you know, I would curse Russo. I hate identifying it by itself or in some of the more simple combos, but it's very similar with lace too, but maybe not quite as much. You can tell that one a little bit better, I would say, but the result is just speaks for itself on what you can do with an animal like this. It's just absolutely incredible, so don't sleep on lace by any means. Another one we showed off on our live here would be this male Wookie Lesser Clown. Just an incredible combo how these two work together. Lesser can sometimes be pretty darn dominant and conquer quite a bit of what you're trying to do, and I love Lesser Clowns. I absolutely love them. They're so unbelievably awesome. But something like this could be a little bit harder to breed in terms of what you're breeding it to, because you can't breed it to a bell type complex like another lesser or a bamboo, unless you want an all white snake. You know, usually if you're breeding an animal of this quality, you're trying to get some more clown combos, but just by itself it looks like a toasted marshmallow. Just absolutely awesome. A very favorable price right now. It will go up, there's no doubt, but if you're looking for a good, cool, bright looking animal with awesome patterns, this is a good one to do, because Wookie is a great gene to work into a lot of combos, especially with clown. Just an incredible genetic that works with everything. Like I said, lesser can sometimes be a lot harder to work with because it is pretty potent. It kind of commands itself when it's in the combo. It's very pronounced, so sometimes if you're trying to work certain things, it kind of oversteps its boundaries, I guess is a good way to put it. But you can see it works well with this, incredibly well. So this would be a nice male to get to start breeding Wookie into it. And quite frankly, like I said, I love lesser clowns, and you can still do quite a few things with them. And I think even with this combo, right here with the Wookie Lesser Clowns, adding some other genetics in there to make this even sharper. From Brock Wagner, one of the leaders in the Sunset project would be the Cinnamon Yellowbelly Leopard Sunset, which also happens to be 66% het lavender. This girl here has a lot of potential. I would immediately send in a shed test to RGI, because if she proves out, one of my favorite combos I've ever seen with Sunset is the lavender sunsets. They're very, very bright, very, very beautiful animals. About the brightest I've ever seen in terms of that orangey type tinge. It's insanely gorgeous. And there's a lot of genetics in here packed as well. So even if she didn't prove out, working this into a Sunset project is a really nice benefit. If you've already got your male sourced and whatnot, that's great. But if you don't, you got time to grow her up. About a year and a half here, you can probably get your male. And by then, I think prices on males for Sunsets will come down even a little bit more, and you could probably get something with even more genetics in there. And by then, you know, you should probably know through genetic testing whether it is het lavender or not. And if it is, you definitely want to get one sourced with the het lavender, assuming you don't already have the money and connections to find one and buy one yourself and just kind of breed more stuff into there. But creating your own would be very, very cool, and it wouldn't be that hard, because you'd always hit the Sunset if you bred a visual to her. And the lavender, you know, you get 1 out of 4 every single time, and each and every single one would be just like this one, 66% het lavender. But we are getting ahead of yourself. You do need to prove out that she is het lavender. But like I said, even if she is not, she is a very gorgeous example from a very good breeder. I don't often show spiders, but I do want to show why they were so popular for so long. They are one of the most visually dominant animals out there. I actually find them difficult to work with. Probably one of the most difficult to work with, because there's so much that they just dominate. It's hard to put other things in there other than color and such like that. But when it does work, man, they're gorgeous. Putting it with Calico, Spider already seems to be a combination of a bunch of genetics. And Calico is one of them that it seems like it has a bit of it. When you look at a Spider, some people often will say, well, that's got Calico or sugar in it, right? But it doesn't. It kind of brings up the white on the sides of it. So when you actually put it with sugar or Calico, it's no surprise to see that the whites come all the way up to the dorsal. And that is cool as heck. This also happens to be super orange dream, and you can see that from the awesome dorsal stripe and the freckles of orange that just kind of go throughout it. This kind of reminds me of the El Diablo snake from Chris Herndon just a bit, but just obviously its own difference in flavor, more whites and whatnot on this one. But it's just absolutely insane. So cool and gorgeous. Not sure how big this one is, but it looks decently big. I wouldn't say quite breeders. That said, I know spiders are not the most sought after animals. This one does have a reserve price, probably because it's so darn unique. Just from a look standpoint, you can't really argue that this thing isn't absolutely gorgeous. Insane. Very, very cool. Like I said, I don't often gush over a spider. Just like I said, I think that it's a little too much when I'm trying to work it, but I get why they were so darn popular for so long, because they are cool. Just by themselves, they're pretty darn cool. I really like just the X on the head too. Almost looks like this is clown in it in some way, but it does not. So very, very cool animal. Moving right along to this pied het Ultramel pair. So that means you have 2 snakes coming along for the ride, and they are both visual pieds that are 100% het Ultramel. The female being at 220 grams, the male at 260 grams. So they got a little bit more weight than just your standard hatchling on there, which is very nice to see. Means that they've been eating pretty well. If you want to make the pied Ultramels, it's a very cool and valid way to go. Pied is always obviously a staple, a gene that's going to be pretty much around and popular forever. But Ultramel, a lot of these color type morphs go so well with it. Just kind of give you a different flavor of what the pied can do, and gives cool, awesome contrast. But that's the sort of stuff you'd be aiming for. Very awesome animals. Lots of potential in that project to go to. I've seen some of the best stuff. I saw a clown pied Ultramel at the Tinley show, and we give it pretty high marks on one of our top 5s. Just absolutely gorgeous animal. Next up would be this Confusion Spotnose Firefly clown. Confusion is such a cool gene. It's another one that I'm not just waiting for it to get into my collection. I'm actively on the hunt to either work with somebody or get one. They are so cool and so potent, and their bellies are just insane. Like you can see here, there's not much you can do to influence the pattern on a belly of a ball python, but this is one of them. It looks like a hognose belly or something like that. Just insane. This one is a little bit more on the bright side. I love the Spotnose being in it. I would probably want to hopefully get something without the pastel. I don't mind the fire so much, but the pastel, and the fire combined, and that's not me crapping on pastel by any means. It's just in certain combos, I kind of would rather see it not in there so it can be a little bit more dark. While this animal admittedly does look absolutely gorgeous. I mean you can see the sun of the darkness kind of just poking through there too. I'm wanting to get Leopard into this immediately to make that pattern even more bonkers, add some more boldness to the blacks as well that way. The Spotnose, I most certainly want to stay along for the ride. I guess that's kind of creating a Batman of some sort there, but it's not even intentional. It's just they work so well together. Very nice animal though, and confusion is definitely a gene that I gotta get into my life. Next up from Juggernaut Reptiles would be this BlkPastel Pied Het Lavender, and I really like this direction it's going. For one, I don't know if this is proven, but it's a 700-gram snake, so it's ready to go pretty much immediately, you know, as soon as you get it established. But I like the direction here because a lot of times people get the BlkPastel Pied and they just immediately want to start doing the Panda Pieds. And while I do not believe that there's anything wrong with that, almost everyone I ever see is mostly all white, other than the head and maybe a few different spots on it. It's kind of funny that you'd think that something that's so dark of a gene with BlkPastel, you'd think it would bring more darkness to it, and it does to most things, but not to Pied. It definitely brings in more whites, but when the dark parts, oh, it's very dark. The reason I like this direction is because I think that the BlkPastel with the Pied and the Lavender is a great direction. You get those dreamsicle BlkPastels, and they work so well together. I would honestly say get yourself a girl that's Lavender Het Pied. Maybe these days you can actually get one that's visual, and get Blackhead in it, because it will work very well with the Lavender. They are some of the brightest snakes I've ever seen. The brightest snake I have here is a Blackhead, and that's kind of why I say that, is because you get the Blackhead, BlkPastel, Dreamsicle, something like that. It would just be really cool. So this would be a really nice way to go if you want to work some really cool Pied projects. Taking a quick break from ball pythons to talk about our friends the hognose snakes, and there are actually 2 pages of auctions of them this week. Starting with this Pink Pastel Albino. I'm not by any means like an expert with the hognose morphs quite yet. I am learning more, and I am planning to breed them, specifically kind of targeting a lot of the albino type morphs. I really love the albino, but the Pink Pastel, I'm not sure if it's allelic with the normal albino line or not. That's something I would need to look into, but it is marked here as its own thing. So you can definitely see these types of pinks, this peachy type fleshy like look to it. It's definitely pronounced, but yet still is an albino line. You can see the red eyes right here. Very cool animal. You can get pinks a lot easier in hognoses, I've noticed, and they're pink in some cases. I mean, like, there's no doubt about it. You know, like I know a lot of times in bull pythons we say, oh, it's red, and it's really just like kind of rust, which is really just kind of a form of orange, really, when you think about it. But they do have these rusty red type undertones. But in hognoses, when I say pink, I mean pink. This one's more of like a peachy type look, but it definitely has a pink undertone, no doubt. So I'm ready to breed, actually, which is very rare. It's like a unicorn for hognoses on these. Would be this red Toffeebelly. You could get this and be ready to breed in very little time. It's got a very good size to it for a hognose too. They breed a lot smaller than do ball python. So this is one that you could just hit the ground running if you've got a male to source to it. Obviously want to work that Toffeebelly line. You can kind of see it's kind of a form of albinism, I suppose, but not quite the same. We do have Toffeebelly in our collection, and probably our oldest hognoses that we have here. So that would probably be the next thing, the first ones that we end up making with any luck, before our regular albinos and sunbursts that we're hopefully going to make, and snows and whatnot, and start hitting the ground running in maybe a few years here. But very cool animal. And then one other thing I wanted to show off is this pair of tricolor hognoses. And you might think, wow, these are the coolest hognoses I think I've ever seen. But I would caution you to understand that these are not the Western hognoses that we are accustomed to. They are not what we just looked at, these two. They are a different species, really. They are hognose, but they are from a different part of the world, and they behave differently. And quite frankly, I bet you they are compatible, but I would not recommend it in any way, shape, or form, because their health is very different. Tricolors are beautiful. This is gorgeous. However, they are notoriously short-lived for a snake. Maybe 7 to 8 years is what I've heard. I'm sure that people have gotten them to live longer, but they are shorter lived. So when you think about how long it takes to maybe get a female this size, you know, there's not a bunch of time there. So while they are very cool, I would caution you, and that's why I wanted to show it off actually, was because you might click on Hognoses, as I did on accident, and forget to filter to Western Hognoses or Plains Hognoses, whatever they have it under in here, and you'll get this, and you might say, oh my god, I need to get this. Tricolor is not the morph it is the species. It is a tricolor hognose. That's the full species, much like Western hognose is the species that we are normally accustomed to and what we keep in our collection and what most people keep, or at least in the United States, I would say. But they are very cool, and if you feel the itch to want to work this, man, go right ahead, because they're gorgeous, but just be realistic and understanding about what their life is like. All right, moving back into ball pythons, we're going to talk about this Redstripe Leopard Fire Clown, and we seem to be showing off Reptile Creation stuff a bit today, which speaks a lot to the quality of what they're doing. This would be a very nice male to get, especially if you wanted to do something on a budget. Like I said, those prices right now are low, especially coming down around this time of year when things are harder to ship anyway. You get less buyers, and to boot, people are buying things for Christmas, and therefore the money is spread a little bit differently. So take advantage of this. This is a good male. Redstripe is such a very, very nice gene. It creates this, what we were kind of just talking a while back, this kind of rusty type chainsaw kind of going down the back of this animal. It's so cool. And you get the orange type head. Leopard definitely enhances the boldness on that. Look at the black spots on this animal. When the blacks do hit, it's mostly very, very just pitch black, except for, you know, a few of them down here near the tail. It just kind of enhances how cool it is because you get this nice contrast, and it's a contrast of just color not only, but in pattern even in of itself. Like I said, you get a pitch black spot and then one that's more shaded on the inside. Lots of variety and coolness there that just really calls out this animal's beauty. And certainly the fire helps clean it up a bit too and embolden it. Without fire, I think it would still be really, really cool, but it might suffer, ironically, from being too dark eventually. So I think that this is a really good male to get into breed into different animals. They're all genetics that you can use. Nothing here is undesirable in any way, shape, or form. The animal itself is already gorgeous, so think about the power you're going to be able to get when you breed this boy into your collection. He could be a definite benefit to a lot of people. If you want to go in a different direction with the banana, this is a really good one to get too, because for one, it's a female maker. Bananas, typically the males that is, will create almost all males or almost all females, and quite often it's males that they create. It's the easier one to do, but when you get a female maker, almost every single baby that it has that has banana will be a female. Very cool, interesting gene and how it works, and one of the more popular ones out there. However, the Cypress on this animal takes the banana clown, which is one of the most popular morphs out there, to the next level. Look at this. You've got the purples, the shading, all the great stuff that comes with banana clown, but now you've got a nearly perfectly orange head. These awesome, awesome neon oranges. And look at this, dare I say, as you know, especially zoomed out when we're looking at this, it nearly looks red. When you zoom in, you clearly see it's just a really ridiculously potent neon orange. This might be one of the best looking bananas I've ever seen. So awesome. I love the banana clowns. It's what got me into all of this. There is a reserve price on this, so we don't know what it'll be, but I often say bid up to what you are comfortable paying. So if you want to pay 500 bucks for this, don't just slap $500 down on this. Bid in $25 or $20 increments and walk it up that way. So right now, if you were interested in this, you know, bid 200, you know, right off the bat. It probably won't beat the reserve, but then bid 225, then bid 250. You get where I'm going until you reach where either the reserve falls off and you stop, or you reach to that amount that you have set for yourself that you don't want to go any higher than, and you stop. Because if the reserve price doesn't fall out, then the auction, when it ends, if nobody else wins it and takes it even higher, it'll just become null and void. So you got no worries there, but just an absolutely gorgeous animal. Just insane. Like I said, one of the better looking clowns I've ever seen. I talked about it, and we mentioned the RK line. I guess it wasn't from them, I just seen it, but we talked about it earlier, the Reptile Keeper line that I was going to mention. I thought it was actually from them, but the line that we're about to talk about is from them. And what it is a special version of Asphalt. So you get the RK line of Asphalt in there with the Yellowbelly and then the Enchi, which makes a Mardi Gras. The Asphalt, Enchi, Yellowbelly creates that. But what's even more crazy about this is the RK line seems to flip it on its head, and the pattern seems to go sideways now. It normally looks like a freeway going down the animal. In fact, without Enchi, they call it a freeway. That's kind of the morph. But with the RK line, they flip it. they flip them to go this way. The coloring is very similar, incredibly similar, but the pattern now moves side to side rather than just down the dorsal of it. You get parts of the dorsal which are just completely barren from pattern. Just absolutely nuts and incredible. You can kind of see here even more from this side angle. Obviously you still get a little bit of dorsal pattern going down, you know, the top of the snake especially, but then when you get down here it's totally different. And look at this faint, awesome patterning, like sandblasted away on the side. More bold in the top, but just sandblasted away on the side. This one also is 50% hip pied, so immediately send in a shed test RGI, see if you can start working that too into something like this. But if you're wanting to work asphalt and into freeway projects, it's a very good morph to do. You know, always sells. Always. These types of morphs, people overlook them sometimes, I think, but I think you should be creating things like this. It helps you fuel your other passions too. You create things like this. They sell quite well if that's the way you want to go about doing it from a monetary standpoint and sell some stuff. These sell well, bells sell well. Things that look visually awesome, they don't cost an arm and a leg. And wouldn't it be cool to have one that's just a little bit more different than the other Mardi Gras from the other freeways floating around in your collection? I think it would be very cool. And then the price is most certainly right. Next, we're going to talk about this lace granite. Reading the description, this one here is guaranteed to be a lace. Originally, it was thought that this would be a Yellowbelly, but it hasn't been bred yet. You could send in a shed test to prove out what it is, but they now believe it is actually granite. Regardless of the point, I'm not talking about it for that. I'm talking about it for being a lace, a female, which is ready to breed. It's guaranteed lace since it came from a white lace, which is what we talked about earlier, the super form of lace. So you're always gonna get lace. And quite frankly, you can tell it too. If you want to get a female that's right off the bat ready to go, this would be a good way to do it. You could create white laces because a male would be a little bit cheaper to get, especially if you get the male we showed earlier. Breeding them to this, you'd immediately start getting the white laces and make them het for clown. Really good way to start doing that and kind of hitting it backwards where you're creating the white lace first but with het clown. I suspect it's something that is like this. I'm surprised it's not going for a little bit more, and I still wouldn't be surprised to see it start hitting off near the end. It's probably because it has no recessives in it, and for better or worse, the ball python community exists currently in a very what recessives do you have in this era? But you know, I definitely think there's a reason for that, and I think the reason makes sense. However, I think that it is too much. I think that sometimes people will look at an animal like this and just say like, it's useless to me. That's not intelligent, because if this goes a ready to breed lace for a steal, well then that's a big time boon for whoever gets it, because you're going to be able to create those animals right off the bat. Even if eventually you move on from her, she will help you in the long term, depending on where you're at. I would argue a good amount of people that are breeding that aren't big time breeders would find a benefit from this animal. There's no doubt, you know. Obviously, would you like it with a het? I certainly would. But that's the price you pay for getting a little bit cheaper, I believe. So definitely don't sleep on the lace gene. And if you are kind of wanting to do it with a budget, this would be a great way to do it, and quickly at that too. Again, she's 1,540 grams. She's ready to be bred. That is definitely saying something, because it puts all the work out of it for you. You could have laces in your incubator this year. On to our final 5, I believe it is, would be this Orange Dream Wookie Redstripe Clown. I already talked about how awesome Wookie is. Just look at that head. So cool, so nice. The coloring in this, beautiful. There's a reserve price again, so there's that to consider, but I already talked about how you handle those. It's not showing Redstripe down here, but it says it came from a Redstripe, so I think it's at least suspected that it'll be in there. So, but that doesn't really matter. But you definitely want it with Redstripe if you can get it. But the Wookie itself is what you're after here. You can't have enough of this genetic in your collection, especially if you're working clown. Works so well with it. A lot of what I said earlier can really just be applied here. Obviously a different kind of look here in terms of the fact that this one has the lesser, so it looks very different, but you can kind of still see where it gets its name from. Obviously the Star Wars type reference with the browns that it brings in are very deep and very pronounced. Another great girl that you could add to your collection. On to our final 3 here, starting off with this Bongo Cypress Clown Het genetic stripe. Wow. Bongo is so underrated, it's not even funny. It's a granite type gene, so it has a lot of that look to it, but Cypress just works so well with it here in this combo. Again, this is without the genetic stripe even showing itself yet. Working the Kiki clowns like that would be very, very cool. Working the Kiki clowns and whatnot is again another one that I don't see enough people do. They are so nice. I see Garrick DeMeyer talk about them a lot. I've got a buddy with Carter's Coils that's kind of going down that route too, and I'm very happy to see it because they don't get enough attention. I don't have a visual one, but it's floating around in a lot of hets that I'm working. So we expect to have some Monarch genetic stripes here possibly this year, and eventually I kind of want to get that into the clown as well, especially if I could hit the triple Monarch genetic stripe clown. I think that would be really, really sharp. But let's kind of bring it back into this animal here. The Cypress and the Bongo being in with this, it's a perfect storm. It just looks so awesome. You've got a bit of mixture. It's so chaotic and just blowing up on the sides, just with all this craziness. What the Bongo really just brings in. The Cypress brings in that beautiful, awesome color, and the Bongo just blows up this pattern in the way that it's doing. Working well with the Cypress in that regard as well, and then how crazy the contrast is in terms of the looks, the colors, and then when you get to the head, and it's just a crisp, cool orange. Very, very nice animal, and would be a really great addition as a male. If you need a good male, you know, to bring some cool genetics in there, maybe another backup male to kind of go in different directions. Bongo and Cypress clown with that extra het for the genetic stripe being in the mix, whether you use it or not, it's a really good direction to go if you need another male. Our second to last for the day would be this acid BlkPastel Leopard Wookie het pied, apparently. 50% het TSK Exanthic. So another one you probably want to go get shed tested because making lightning pieds is awesome. And just as a fair warning, I think most people might know this, but all the Exanthic lines, they say TSK, they say VPI, they say other such things, right? Pay attention to them. If you are getting into this new and you want to work Exanthic, they need to match because they're not compatible. If you get a VPI male to put to this and it proved out as het Exanthic still, well, it proved out as het Exanthic TSK line, which stands for the Snake Keeper, by the way, and a VPI to it will create nothing more than possible double hets, which would be very sad because they do the exact same thing. So don't do that. Make sure that you're paying attention to the lines you're working and stick with them. With that said, there's a lot to be said about this animal here. It's still got a lot of time to cross the finish line, so the price could definitely balloon up. But we talked about Wookie a lot today. There's a lot going on for this. This is a pretty good powerhouse female, and if she proves out, it's going to be even more wild. So definitely take a look to see if you can prove her out. What's even crazier is that they say she's also het pied. I would test for het pied too, and not for het pied. You're really just testing for pied, because ringers can happen. There's no doubt. So you get the right genetics together and a het pied hits, they will give a ringer. And you know, you get that a lot with champagnes. You get champagne het pied, they call it the poor man's pied, and you can get something that looks like this. But you know, I don't know. I would test for the pied just to see if it's pied instead of het pied, quite frankly, in which case you've benefited even more. So at worst, you've got a het pied female that's got a lot of genetics in there. At best, you've got a pied het Exanthic. So that would be very, very cool. And finally, we're gonna wrap it up on a gene that we don't see very much, has no reserve on, and could be something that if you want to get in there into this project, would be a nice one to do. It would be this Furrow Mahogany Lesser, and she's ready to breed. So again, something you could start working recessives into if you want, and you can definitely see the difference here. With Lesser and Mahogany, this is not how it would normally look. Look at the granulation on the sides, these cool copper type lookings. That's the Furrow making itself known. It's a gene that I'm still trying to wrap my mind around and understand a little bit more, a little bit better, but the more I see, the more I like. So I welcome you to take a look at that, because you could start getting in on the groundwork of a genetic that's not really well represented yet. It's a gene that I was first called attention to from Leviathan snakes, and then I kind of just have been keeping and seeing it pop up here, and I like everything I've seen so far. Again, another one that you don't have to keep her forever, probably. You know, keep her and start working her into certain projects, but since she's ready to breed, you can get her and kind of put her into the projects you want and get that Furrow to come along for the ride, and eventually once you get what you need, you can move on from her and let somebody else have the same opportunity. But such a really cool and striking example of these sides. Awesome coppery type look to her. I would love to see this continued and worked. Really cool. And remind you, not only is she ready to breed, you know, obviously that makes she's ready to go, but that's her as an adult. She looks dang good for being an adult. So yeah, this is a cool combo. Remember what I said about Lesser being hard to work with earlier sometimes too? These three genes seem to be working together quite well in an adult. So consider that, and maybe this is something that goes right up your alley. It just got put up, $100 bid. It'll no doubt go. Wow, this just got bid on as I said it. I'm positive of it. Well, it's begun. So if you want to get in on this, you can go ahead and beat the one person who just a few seconds ago placed the bid as I'm talking about it. So very cool animal and a project that I think has a lot of directions it can still go. Hope you enjoyed this week's auctions. If you did get anything from this week or from prior weeks, definitely check them out. We actually have a video coming out here soon. We're just kind of working through the beginnings of it, and we're going to release one on a different type of auction site. In fact, we might just do one on, well, every single auction site that you can do for ball pythons. So let us know in the comments what you'd kind of like to see, and we will see you in the next one. If you like this video, you can actually check out a lot of the genetics we talked about right here and here.